Good morning. How are you? Here I am, immersed in the message of the rain, in the symbolism of the rain. It symbolizes so many deep things. That's why the sound is a little more rainy. It is a wonderful rainy day that dawned with thunder. How not to surrender to this marvel that is the rain. The camera moves a little because today I have it on the same table where I am having breakfast. The rain symbolizes mainly the fecundation, that primary act of that evolutionary state of the earth, so important. When there is water, the storms begin to form, a fecundation begins. The sky joins the earth in a fecundation that gave rise to the next step. And it is thanks to that today we have the way of living this human experience that we have, biological. But also the rain, among many other things, because the rain has a lot of symbolism and it varies depending on the culture too. But also the rain is related to that contention that we have before releasing an emotion. It is that storm that is preparing, that the sky gets dark, that it seems unable to hold back any longer, until it releases that cry that always produces a possibility to rebuild. That is why it is also that fecundation, because after that cry comes that state of peace that also reflects very accurately that the rain has passed. Today I want to talk a little about the unconscious mind, because there is a tendency from ignorance to believe that this type of things that have to do with the unconscious mind or healing, life changes, things outside of what is usually taken as academic. They are usually seen as having a lot of magic, as having a lot of superstition and a lot of other types of things. And it may be like that in some cases. In humano puente it is not. In humano puente, if things do not go through a logical process, and the things that are applied are not reflected in matter in terms of the healing of symptoms or the life changes of people, one continues making the path until one is certain that this happens following a certain logic. And one realizes it because if that logic is correct, the symptom should be modified or the reality of the person should be modified, which is the same. The unconscious mind is a machine that is so huge. I am writing a lot about the unconscious mind. Well, I do it in all the books, but in this last book I am talking about it at a deeper level so that it is understood. I, for example, have in front of me at this moment almonds, nuts for breakfast. Here they are, pieces of cheese, I have honey. And my unconscious mind already has a file of those things. My unconscious mind has in the almonds all the history of the almonds, all the symbology of the almonds, starting from the collective unconscious, passing through a closer unconscious, which could already be part of the family unconscious, then the family unconscious, and the individual unconscious. That is, I personally have a history with almonds. My family has a history related to almonds, and the collective unconscious has a history related to almonds. Since all human beings have recorded an unconscious mandate to belong to a family, because that moves us away from the possibility of perishing, and that in turn that family has an unconscious mandate to belong to a social group, to a tribe, to an ethnic group, what today would be a society. For the same reason, to move away from the possibility of perishing. Because each house that was empty, each hut that was empty in the middle of the savannah, the desert, the mountain or the forest was much more likely to be attacked, not only by animals, but by other tribes and other peoples, and thus facing the risk of perishing. That is what the ethnic groups, the groups of hunters, the armies, the cultures, the kingdoms have derived from. But that comes from the shoal. So my unconscious has those scales of value, that obligation to belong, those codes that make us always tend to remain. That is why the human being, which is totally biological, prefers to think like the majority and not the truth, not necessarily the truth. There are few deep truths that the majority thinks. That is why humanity advances technologically, advances scientifically, and the results are not reflected in happiness, in peace, but are reflected in other things. The truth is that each object, each element of reality has its history in those scales of the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind does not keep each element of reality, like this piece of walnut, loose in a place. No, everything in the unconscious mind is anchored and recorded at all levels, the individual unconscious, the family unconscious, and the collective unconscious, united to actions, united to histories. For example, this omen in the collective unconscious can be related to something. There may have been wars for the trade of omens. It may have symbolized a lot of things. In India, in many places, a goddess may have given omens to someone. And in personal history, for example, if everything is fine, this omen would be stored in a place where it says omened, and next to it it will say, for example, Christmas of 1994, or John Doe's wedding, or dinner of 1997, or breakfast with my grandmother, or anything else. Now, the unconscious mind does not have everything categorized permanently. Suddenly I am here, eating almonds, eating cheese, eating honey, and the three things are well categorized in my unconscious mind. And all the histories that I have in my unconscious categorized with those things are stored in boxes that we could call positive. But suddenly I am here and I receive bad news, or an accident occurs in front of me, or something like that happens. Automatically everything that was in this scene would become part of another type of file. That is why I say that the unconscious mind recategorizes. It does not always have the omen in a good place. The omen has to be united to certain scenes. As soon as the omen is united to scenes that lead in a direction that is not 100% coherent with what the universe is looking for in us, the omen transitions into a file that says, be careful, the omen was present in a moment of drama, in a moment in which the person lived a destabilizing situation. The cheese was archived under a good category, but now it is in a file that says, be careful, the cheese was present in a moment of drama. The honey was well categorized, and now it says, be careful, the honey was present in a moment in which there was a drama. From there on, like the best intelligence service, the unconscious mind would be very alert. In reality, it is not alert. It is an automatic process. It is like a kind of big computer, calculator. One day we will talk about the program and the programmer. But the unconscious mind will always be attentive to a certain situation. And it will be when the almond is in the same situation together with the honey. There, the yellow lights will turn on, and the red light would turn on when the cheese arrives. When the three come together again, the unconscious mind will trigger all the alarms. And those alarms will manifest on a physical level. And that is what we call allergy, on a mental level. And that is what we call phobia, and on a deeper mental level, because death was closer, and that is what we call panic attack. It is no more than the repetition of patterns in the unconscious mind of scenes that are marking that are very similar to previous scenes, in which those elements were present and a situation was given. But it is not any situation, it is always the same situation. So this path, as I always propose, the Humano-pointed path that is done in 13 days, I repeat, 2 gatherings of 5 days and the online encounter. The first step is done online, and the other 2 are 2 meetings of 5 days with me. This path is very simple. This path shows a logic. And what we have to continue with is the deepening of this, because cheese has a meaning in the collective unconscious. It has a meaning in the family unconscious. Honey has a meaning in the collective unconscious. Being related to bees, being related to love, being related to sexuality, being related to a lot of histories. And in addition, there are a lot of structures that you have to know about the unconscious mind to know how it organizes, how it is built. But what I want to tell you here, because the video is almost over already, is that direction that has to unquestionably appear in an allergy is because the scene of pain that appeared there is not any scene of pain, but in the background that scene of pain was leading to a separation, or a risk of separation, or to being frowned upon, or to death. All those things, in the end, lead to death, because for the unconscious mind, a separation from the sensory point of view, I no longer see a person, I no longer speak to him, I no longer have contact with him. The process is the same as that of a dead person. For the unconscious mind, it is called symbolic death, because it puts it in the same box as real death. For the unconscious mind, when I am frowned upon, it reminds it of that moment when I was going to be left out of the show, when I was going to be left out of the group, out of society, and I was going to die. And for the unconscious mind, when someone dies, it is directly when someone dies. So all the allergies, all the phobias and attention, all the symptoms of humanity are given in this scheme. And there was a situation that in the past led to these types of circumstances. And now the patterns are being repeated, especially for most of humanity, patterns of time. Because when one does not start working from the unconscious, one is governed by biology specifically, and biology specifically belongs to the material world, 100% to the false material world, because there is nothing material, everything is flowing atoms, flowing energy, but in that field, in the material world, one is governed by time. As I said recently, the Mayan calendar shows a man in the center carrying time, and that is the great distortion of humanity. Well, listen to the storm, enjoy it. I send you a big hug. See you soon, always at humanapuente.com. Follow the questions on Instagram. I will answer them in the next video, in which I continue to talk about all the topics that you propose, but also in the podcast. Go to Spotify, iVoox, or Apple Podcasts and other podcast platforms, and write Humana Puente there. There you will find a lot of audios so that you can listen. Also, obviously, at humanapuente.com. There you have the list of consultants. There you have how to join the Humana Puente path. There you have how to be attended in any place in the world, in any language, by a video call, and in all those ways. I love you. A big hug. What a good storm. A hug.